Gary he gave me a hello at 2:26 in the morning, but he thought I was still up.
Really? 2:26.
Well, I had my phone on, so it's always live. But
yeah. Good morning, Mike.
Still awake.
Good morning, Mike, and good morning, Betty. Welcome to the show. Looks like a rainy day. Well, yeah, not exactly looking brilliant out there. Okay, all right. Yeah, so we ended up on this yesterday. Trump mocking MBS, Saudi's leader, or Mohammed bin Salman, I believe his name is.
Yes. Now we have found out that that certain ones of the Arab Gulf, not the Iranian Gulf, but the Arab Gulf nations are having real problems with the Israeli-U.S. war on Iran. It's not concluding. For the 4 to 6 week, the 4 to 6 week war has extended quite a bit now.
Yeah,
and it's heading to actually, and it's like pushing 3 months, coming up pretty soon.
Well, and it's at stalemate as well, if we're honest about it. But I think this is so. Trump was speaking at a Saudi-backed investment forum in Florida. And this was seeming, normally most people would suck up to those type of things, suck up to Saudi Arabia in that kind of thing. They'd be saying nice things about Saudi Arabia, right? And he turns around and says he didn't think this was going to happen. He didn't think he would be kissing my ass. He thought I would be just another American president of a country going downhill, but now he has to be nice to me.
Yeah, let's put this in context. Let's make sure that everybody understands what's talking about here. We find that the Gulf Arab nations are having difficulty with the U.S., and they're having a little bit of difficulty with Trump himself, because he's going on and talking about MBS, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, is going to kiss my ass. He's kissing my ass.
Yeah.
He said the same thing about other countries trying to get tariff deals. They're all coming around here to kiss my ass. And this is the kind of language that is not exactly presidential.
No.
And you are offending, and he is offending. Like, that does not go down very well in anywhere in the world, but the Arab world, it is extremely like they are more polite, basically, and they have extremely insulting for the Saudi people and for the Saudi regime. And he wants to be tight friends with the Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia can help him a lot with the oil prices and how much flow there is out there.
Yeah.
And right now they're not protecting the Saudis very well. And the Saudis have just said, hey, you can't use our airspace anymore. Stop it. Right now, right in the middle of the war. And part of the reason for that is idiot boy here is calling MBS, saying MBS is kissing my ass.
Yeah, yeah. That is A, unpresidential, B, not the type of language one ever uses. You don't even refer to your ass in Saudi Arabia. You just do not do that. That's kind of thing you do not do. And in any case, even with there's a way in Saudi Arabia, for example, and as you pointed out, the Arab states are very particular about this. There is a way that there's a way that you have to say that you disagree with somebody in Saudi Arabia, and it's a heck of a different rule than what we've got. You can't just say, "Hey, Dave, you're a bozo," right? You've got to be politely, Mr. Dave, I respect you greatly, but.
Well, yes, but there is a thing called diplomacy.
Yeah,
and it means that if you're very know who you're dealing with. For one thing, you don't go around the world and telling the leaders that they're kissing your ass.
Yeah,
you just do not do that. That's insulting to everybody.
Yeah,
and it makes you look like a crude and vulgar person, which apparently he seems to be fitting that. But the other thing is, like, American ignorance is unbelievable, and I don't know why they don't fix that. Yeah, when the when the president of Liberia came to talk to Trump, he says, "Oh, your English is so good. Oh, I don't know how you speak English so well. I don't know where you learned to speak English." He doesn't understand that Liberia is the language of, like English is the language of Liberia. And the American ignorance goes way back. Turkey, when Turkey had its birthday, the President Truman at the time sent the Turkish government a turkey, like a turkey. And of course, the people from Turkey didn't understand that one bit, because turkey has nothing to do with the bird turkey.
And
it's
actually,
a different language and means a different thing.
Yeah.
And yet the president of Truman sends him a turkey, thinks that would be a good idea, you know? And he couldn't figure out what the heck he was going on about.
Yeah.
What does Rick say?
Had a meeting with the UAE.
Yeah, Israel's in it up to their neck. They, of course, want all the Arab nations to keep on fighting Iran, and they're probably trying to placate the UAE. The UAE is getting hit a little bit more because it was late. Like, the Arab nations around there are complaining that this war is. They were convinced that it was a good thing, that we're going to get it done quick, and there was going to be a regime change and all that, and none of that happened.
Well, it went.
If anything, the Straits of Hormuz have been closed up, and it's really stifled the economy of not only the world, but especially those countries.
Yeah.
And it does not help when the president of the United States sounds like a barbarian. It goes around talking about people kissing his ass.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Was he?
Well, and as I say, when you have these like Saudi-backed investment banking forums in Florida, normally you're kissing up to the Saudis because you want them to bring and provide money to the local economy, don't you?
Well, the Saudis and the Emiratis and all that have done their own massive amounts of ass kicking, if you would like, by handing huge amounts of money to Donald Trump and his kids and his son-in-law. They're just handing him all kinds of money and for the Bitcoin operations and all that other stuff. But that's the way they do business. You know what I mean? They butter up the leader. That's supposed to be done that way in their cultures. But anyway, I put that article in there to say how Trump's lack of diplomacy is really interfering with things here. You know, he beaks off like that, and later on he apologized behind the screen. He never apologizes, but he just, you know, then he turns around and says MBS is such a great guy. He's wonderful. He's all that. In the meantime, he's already done the damage. He's told the world that MBS is kissing his ass. The whole world, he does that.
Yeah.
Right. So, and that's one of his best allies.
Yeah, exactly.
No. And Mike Cushman says, an Alberta judge ruled that the separatist petition process should not have gone ahead because the province failed to consult First Nations, whose treaty rights could be affected by Alberta leaving Canada. Yes, I don't understand why they didn't know that, because when there was a Quebec referendum, all the native nations in Quebec said we didn't agree with that. This is, we made our treaties with Canada. We didn't make our treaties with Quebec. So if you leave, we're staying if we feel like staying.
Yeah.
And they should have learned by that in Alberta. But they're one of the reasons why they try to cut corners is to sort of get that momentum going and hope nobody notices that they left gaps in it.
Yeah. And in fact, actually, that's one thing. That's one thing that's important that's actually. I saw that yesterday. I'm sorry, I should have added an article for today, but I didn't. My fault. I saw that. I saw exactly this. So essentially the petition is on hold right now.
Yes, and I don't know. It has to be done legally, and to to cut I mean, that's just amateurish to cut out the First Nations. It's very obvious. All you had to do is look into the first couple of pages of what was wrong with the Quebec referendum, and you could see very clearly that they did not consult the First Nations and expected them to fall in line. The First Nations says no. Our treaties with Canada is not with Quebec.
Yeah,
we do what we want.
Exactly. Yeah. So Alberta wants to separate. So what becomes of the treaties? Well, basically, treaty land is something like 90% of Alberta. So you can have.
Well, look, Canada was a nation before Alberta was a province. So Canada administered that area long before Alberta was a province, and all the treaties and stuff like that were made with Canada. The idea that Alberta was created, it was created by an act of Parliament, basically. They're the only ones that could dismantle it.
Yeah. So essentially, as Betty says, yes, the referendum can't be done. And Mike is suggesting that Daniel Smith is a traitor. Well, taking American money, that certainly is treacherous. Yes. The other question about that, of course, is that it leaves about 3 square miles for Alberta to be independent. So that's going to be a pipsqueak little nation that nobody can find on a map.
Well, I don't know. Daniel Smith, you want to take a page out of Donald's book, and Donald wants to be a king. She wants to be a queen. Queen Danielle.
Yeah.
Of her own little nation. But in any case, I should say this public announcement right now. We should say out there that for all those affected, you can join and become part of Trumpaholics Anonymous. All of you out there who are so fully intoxicated by the words of Donald Trump, there is a place where you can go. It's called Trumpaholics Anonymous. We realize you're being intoxicated and fooled every which way. There is a place where you can retrieve your mind, get your life back.
What's the rules about joining Trumpaholics Anonymous?
It's going to be difficult. It's going to be even difficult for most.
Is it a 12-step program?
Well, it's basically you have to read this book called Common Sense, and it just says, like, don't believe any politician you hear. Do not believe everything a politician says, that kind of thing. There is also a big dartboard with Donald Trump's face in it, so you get to throw darts at it. It's going to be hard for a Trumpaholic to do that. But anyway, so I just put out there, I know there's lots of you that have that problem. It is a social problem, just like Alcoholics Anonymous. There's a lot of people with that problem. It can't be helped, but there is help. Trumpaholics Anonymous. Just keep that in mind.
Well, I'm also going to make another announcement then in that particular case. There's also another group that has to be set up in relation to that, which is also the Anti-Trumpaholics Anonymous.
Well, that, you know what, that might not be a bad idea, and I'll take a moment to talk about that too. I've been watching the kind of press that's rallied against Trump right now, and I think the left is really shooting themselves in the foot because they're going after trivialities and they're making mountains out of molehills. This is exactly the reason why they failed so bad in the 2 elections that Trump did win, is they exaggerate things to make it really stupid. Right now, when Trump was asked, did he consider any of the American people's plight in this war? It's made it so much more expensive for the average American to live with gas prices and so on. And asked if he ever considered that. And he said, no, he didn't consider the Americans, how much more expensive life is. The only thing I care about is the nuclear bomb. Well, now that's kind of a misspeak. Basically, what he really meant, and I knew what he meant, is my primary concern is the nuke. And he also said that oil and gas prices will come down later, short-term pain for long-term gain sort of thing. but I knew exactly what he meant. I knew that he didn't mean that he was ignoring the average American. I knew that what he really meant to say was, and he didn't say it well, but he said that, that's the primary thing we have to worry about, whether you agree with them or not. So the left picked up on that and just amplified it out of control. Like, seriously, oh, Donald Trump doesn't care about the average person. There it is. This is what he said. Come on. He's knitting enough rope to hang himself without you exaggerating everything. They're exaggerating on Kash Patel's stuff too. Like, they're just blowing that out of control. Stop doing that. You want to beat Donald Trump, you want to beat the Republicans, stick to the facts. Stick to the objective facts. That's all. Once you start the exaggeration process, you
see what I mean? The clear need for an anti-Trumpaholics Anonymous.
Well, it's more than just a Trumpaholics Anonymous. It's I would say a leftaholics, basically. They fall into this zone of hyperbole and exaggeration. Like the Fox people do that, but nobody really pays attention to the Fox and give them any credibility. But unfortunately, some of the left-leaning press does have credibility. And when they go into this exaggeration zone, I mean, they lose, right? They make me so angry. Like, stick to the facts. Stick to the facts. Everybody knows that Trump did not mean that. He did not mean that he ignores the average person's plight at all. What he meant is he pretty much said his priority was to get that nuke done. Now, whether you believe it or not, I don't particularly believe it myself, but do not take his words and exaggerate them and run with them. You damn well know that he didn't mean precisely what you're saying.
Yeah.
That you know that.
All right.
And so why play this silly game?
Yeah.
And that's what's got me so mad about the left and how they approach this. Stick with the facts. No wonder you lost the last election.
Okay. All right. Moving on. A Welland man is facing sentencing over international sexploitation case. All right. So he's been found guilty. He's pleading guilty to multiple serious offences of online exploitation of children, luring, extortion or sextortion, and the victims are in Canada, US, and other international places. And investigators determined the accused used online platforms to target young people, coercing them into sharing explicit images, then threatening them to obtain more material or money.
Yes. So this is a hard one for me to read, basically, because my heart really went out. This guy has done is he's gone online and he gets young people, particularly girls, to give them pictures, lewd pictures themselves, or do videos and things like that. He has a way of persuading them to do things.
Yep.
Then what he does is he blackmails them. He's saying, okay, you got to send me more money and more pictures of yourself, or I will put this online and ruin your life. So imagine a 14-year-old girl who's done something sort of immature and now is stuck in a blackmail. Now she's got to go tell her parents what she's done, and this thing is looming over her. Her image could be put all around the internet. Her life could be ruined. Now, kids commit suicide over this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So this guy is a grotesque criminal. He is of the lowest order. He is making these kids suffer enormous amount of emotional pain. Even so, sometimes in this article, it says some of the kids have never been able to get back to normal after they've been sextorted from a guy like this. It's also interesting that the U.S. tipped off Canada about this. Canada didn't find it itself. It was a group in the U.S. that it was U.S.-based National Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
Yeah,
found out that this 33-year-old Welland man was doing that. So, okay, this is a good, very, very good example of international cooperation.
Well, when I was searching around this story yesterday, when you sent it up, there was also an earlier story about Niagara police having laid charges against a Toronto man as well.
Well, that was I think we covered that some time ago, didn't we?
That was the beginning of March. That was.
Yeah,
I don't
maybe.
know whether it was this one or that one that we covered in earlier on in the year, but there's so I noticed that there's several are being arrested. Several arrests here.
Well, the thing is, you can make money off it. There is a sector of the population that has some kind of psychological illness. I don't know what it is, but they get off on child porn.
Yeah.
And a lot of these people live in the shadows. They just look at child porn, and I don't get it, man. It makes my stomach turn. The whole very idea of it.
Yeah.
It actually kind of it brings tears to my eyes, because I think of these little children, or even teens and stuff like this, going through something they should never go through. But in this particular case, this guy is exploiting them and getting money and more pictures of, because he can sell those pictures to the sort of oddballs out there. And I'm trying to be as kind as possible, because I don't know what kind of psychological illness they have, but there's a need among some. I don't know how you're going to fix it, what doctor you go to, what pill you take to stop doing that.
There isn't any pill you take to stop doing that. That's the truth. Right.
Well, obviously not, but my expression is, anyway, so this guy, let's get back down to tax. This is a good international cooperation for forces across, right, who tipped off the...
Well, that's the only way this is ever going to get... The only way you're ever going to get to the bottom of these things is by international action, right? Because, a victim shows up in some remote location, and the police interview her and find out, oh, she's from Welland or something like that. So it takes a lot of international cooperation.
Kids between 12 and 14, Canada, US, and other countries, it says here.
Yeah.
Now, during the sentencing hearing, this is what bothers me, and this is what Paul was talking about on his show about slap on the wrist type. We focused this on the show the other day about scammers getting almost nothing in the way of detentions, and here we have a chance now to put away this guy. Now the recommended I think it was like 12 to 14 years in jail for this guy, but his defense are saying, oh well, you know what, he can't help it. He has alcohol syndrome, child alcohol syndrome, a fetal alcohol syndrome, and he's had a bad life and everything else like that. So his defense attorneys are recommending that he has a stay-at-home type of sentence.
No.
Come on.
No. Absolutely not. The thing is that this guy needs to go to jail. He needs to go to jail for life, never have the prospect of getting out. But, that's not going to happen.
No, it's not. And not only that, he's got to go to jail, but he's got to go under some treatment. Like there got to be, this guy may not have the ability to understand what he's doing is bad. I doubt it. But you could say that he has to go under intensive counseling. And then when he is let out of jail after 10 years or whatever, then he has to wear a collar the rest of his life. And everything he does on the internet or anything has to be closely monitored.
Yeah. Okay. The other thing is that, look, Mike makes a good point here. He basically said he made his grandson read and digest the article, and they spoke to him about this and what's going on online. And I get it. Mike is basically saying to his young grandson that you've got to understand about this sort of stuff and the impact it has upon you the world, because it's not just, it's a serious thing, and it can happen to anybody, right?
This is a life-changing situation. It can crush the life out of children, and they'll never get it back. It may take them years to recover from this kind of thing, and they may never really. Remember, they're young. They have, they have young minds and young spirits, and it says here, parents, one of the victim statements says, before this incident, our daughter was a happy, trusting young girl who felt safe in her world.
Yeah.
Since the exploitation occurred, we have witnessed profound, heartbreaking changes in her emotional health, daily functioning, and sense of security. This is after it's being resolved, after the bad guy's being nabbed, and after she's being told that she is being a victim. And but it is, a child should be allowed to grow, learn, mature at her own pace, free from manipulation and exploitation. Yeah, you got to come down hard on these guys.
Yeah.
Seriously, they didn't kill anybody, but they have ruined the life of someone.
Yeah,
really.
Oh, yeah.
This is a hurt that will never go away.
Yeah,
it's a scar that they have to bear their whole life, and the fear and insecurity for a child, really, a young child, somebody 12 or 14 years old, should walk down the street with confidence. And anyway, yeah. So what a world where one mistake is told forever, held forever. Yes. Yeah, that's definitely. And of course, the rest of us don't care. Okay, you made a dumb mistake, so what? Move on. But not them. They have that stuck in them the whole life. I made a mistake that other people might have got away with, but I didn't. And it's just the suffering.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I believe that, like, this business, I get it. The lawyer's doing what he's supposed to do, trying to get the guy a soft sentence. But here is the situation where you can actually put the guy away for the crime that he's been doing. And get him out of the way, right? Give him whatever kind of rehabilitation he needs once he's in prison, but get him out of the way from that. He doesn't have to physically be in the presence of children to hurt them. And that's what we got to realize.
And here's the key factor about this, Dave, is that for every person that he's pleading guilty to having exploited, there are probably 5 or 10 others that he's also done it for that that are not on the list.
For sure, there are probably hundreds. For every one you hear about, there could be hundreds more. He had 730 images and 300 videos of these children, and you can imagine how like that's just deadly. And I would like to have the authorities be able to search back all these videos, somehow get to these children and assure them that they have been a victim. There's nothing wrong with them, that they have been a victim. It's no different than being clubbed over the head and robbed.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. They've been a victim of this sort of stuff. And as I say, for me, it should be life, and life should mean life. No possibility of parole.
Yeah, it's no reflection on your character that you get victimized by an adult.
How old is this person? This Welland guy was 33.
He's 33.
The other ones that I found out is there was a 55-year-old man from Toronto and one from Pelham that was they didn't actually mention the Pelham one.
Yeah, they got pretty good ways of finding them, but there's just not like Peter Townsend. If you remember, Peter Townsend was arrested for because they found that he was going to child porn sites, but he had a pretty good excuse for it. He'd been working trying to. He himself was a child that was sexually abused as a child, and he was kind of doing a study of it and hoping to somehow figure out how to stop this. But he had been a victim of it himself, and that's why he was looking at those sites.
Don't tell Bam Bam, says Ricky Pizza Killer. Yeah, so Rob Primo and Bam Bam Andrews. It's like I can't even tell them. They know what's going on. I assure you, they've been down. They have been down in Welland. I guarantee you that van has been down in Welland for the last week.
Oh yeah, they whatever all the different things they do and think. I think they would be, yeah, in this particular case, they'd be outraged, and what everybody else is. That's the one thing we share with them. There's an outrage that this kind of thing could happen.
Well, I know, but
they probably hang the guy.
Those guys go over the top. They're just way too much, and I know that they're repeating what a lot of us feel, but sometimes we don't need it. We don't need their demonstrations on the streets.
I want this to go into schools. Basically, I want this to go to schools. I want every kid to be educated. There's a section of every school day. Make sure every child is made aware of their potential to be made victims.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I think education goes a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And I don't think we can say enough about how a kid could be educated. And Mike is right in that regard. Telling the children, make them read it, make them understand it, discuss it.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, it has to be put out there from the very beginning, from elementary school. Don't wait till they already get to high school. It might be too late, right? Yeah. Start them young. Start them in school. That there are. You don't want to scare them, but you want to make very sure like they understand that there's bad people out there that will steal things, or bad people out there, that kind of thing that will hurt other people. So just begin early. And make sure they're fully aware and defensive. Just like you tell a kid, don't get into a car. If somebody comes over and says, get into a car, you tell them, don't do that. And in this particular case, it's very similar. You educate them in the same way.
Yeah. And Betty, you're absolutely right, Betty. They used to, when I went to school, there used to be a police officer came around to every class once or twice a year. And in fact, there might be when we had them in assembly where they would give information about what you need to do to stay safe. Right?
Yes. Yeah, that was part of it. Don't get into a car, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know whether they do that in modern schools. They should.
I don't know. There are so many restrictions on how you can educate a person these days. I don't know. I think that would be essential. I like to see the police get into the schools and have a very up-to-date way in which to connect with the children. But anyway, I think we flogged that to death. But yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, it's out there.
Yeah. They're moving. Well, I wouldn't say we flogged it to death, Dave. We've expressed the importance of it. We've expressed our anger, and it's time to move on.
Yes, I would say that. But, well, I mean, I could go on all day long.
I know.
I could go on all day long about
a lot of people will.
How angry I am, how upset I am, how I've got when I go into the schools, I haven't done that for a while because the Key Club that I was organizing no longer exists, or working with no longer exists. But I had to get a vulnerable sector check from the police, right? So they check, and it's more than just a criminal check. It's a vulnerable sector check. So it looks at all your crime, but particularly focuses on things of sex, elderly, children, exploitation, sexual and other. I mean, they could find out if I've been scamming old people too. But I think something like that is essential too for anybody that's going to be working with kids. They should actually get that vulnerable sector check.
Yeah.
That makes the parents at least feel comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's rules you go by. There's rules you go by. I'll also say there's rules you go by. For instance, you can't be in a room with a child alone.
Mhm.
There has to be, I think, at least 5 other kids of a certain age before you can be alone with them. I know the kids know it better than I do, because I remember I was in the classroom with 5 girls, 5 high school girls, and we were doing something for whatever project they were. And then I thought, hey, wait a minute. I said, should I be here with you girls? Shouldn't there be a teacher? And they knew the rules. Oh, no, there's X amount of us, and that's okay according to the rules. Okay, good.
Well, at least you questioned it and that they knew the answer, right?
Yeah, they knew the answer.
I think that puts a lot of confidence. You see, I would say that if the girl's parents heard that conversation, that would increase their trust in you.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that they felt very comfortable too. And the last thing I would need was somebody coming into the room. Hey, you shouldn't be here with these kids.
Exactly.
And I think, and that would make them feel very uncomfortable.
Yeah, you need to actually be comfortable with the rules in that scenario, right? You need to know what the rules are and be assured that you are actually obeying the rules.
Yeah, so there are good rules, and it just makes the kids more safe. Remember, it's protecting the kids from that 1 in a 1,000 person that might show up,
So he says you were in a nun school. No, it was a Catholic school, but yeah, we're not a nun school.
Nun school.
All right. Okay. Moving on. So American applicants who applied before Bill C-3 was enacted are being pushed to the back of the line, according to this report.
Well, this report, I'm not so sure that it accurately reflects what's happening here, because they zone in on a family that has had cross-border. They zone in on a family that has had cross-border connections. It's very, very common in Southern Ontario to have relatives in the States. I do, right? I have relatives in the States, and as a matter of fact, my father's brother, who's a Canadian, he just went over there, and because his father was an American, he was able to get his American citizenship, no problem. My father could have got it if he wanted it too, which I still am angry at, because I could have been a dual citizen myself, and which was very, very opportunistic to be able to have a dual citizens. Lots of my friends are dual citizens. One of the things that people used to do here in Southern Ontario is get your babies born in the United States, because once they're born in the United States, they are an American. So I've known lots of people that go over to the States in the past. I don't know if it still happens. Go over to the States, have their doctor there. The baby is born in the States, so it's automatic American citizenship. They bring it back, and it's automatic Canadian citizens. They automatically have 2 passports. Lots of my friends have been dual citizens doing the same thing. Now, what's happened is a few generations pass by, and you're locked out of regaining your Canadian citizenship. That's not the case in this. The new C3 bill allows more of an ancestry to be permitted to come back to Canada. It's called the lost generation thing.
And it makes a lot of sense because of the fact that there are many people where one generation has lived in Canada, the next generation lives in America, the next generation is back to Canada. So there's, but again, the family splinters over time. So some of the families in America and some of the families in Canada, it makes a lot of sense, this bill, right? It's a very limited. It's very limited in scope insofar as it wouldn't apply to me or my family because they've got none of this.
Well, anyway, look, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
They say in this article that if before C3, if you put your applications in before all the C3 problems got ironed out, then you got put to the back of the the bus, basically, that those applications will be viewed differently. When you read it, you can see that the Canadian bureaucracy and its legendary poor, slow, ponderous performance is evident here. But there's also something else. When you read this article, I'm not so sure what they claim is true here, because when the Canadian government was asked to make comment on this, they say that there's an area of that they take certain applicants and put it in a different section. These are applicants of people that cannot quite clearly prove their Canadian background. Yeah. So there's a problem with documentation. They're not saying they're not there or not, but it's hard to or harder to prove that there is a Canadian ancestry there. In this particular article, they cite their grandfather and all this and how he lived in Buffalo and had properties on both sides of the border, et cetera, but he was born in Canada, that kind of thing. But if you read the article carefully, you begin to suspect that possibly the application that they say have been put back because they applied too early may have been just a part of the real procedure of taking applications that haven't got very clear proof of previous Canadian citizenship. So a lot of the people are going to try to spoof this. Right.
Oh, of course.
All over the world, of course.
Yeah, of course they are. Yeah, absolutely. Of course, there's always any one of these kind of things. There's always somebody looking for a loophole in it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I've been living in Sri Lanka for 1,000 years in my family, but I'm pretty sure back in 1703, my Canadian, I got a Sri Lankan sailor got blown off course, and he ended up in Nova Scotia for 10 days, and he should be that kind of thing,
Yeah,
exaggerate.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to Grimsby candidates for the municipal elections, the ones that have been announced thus far. Jeff Jordan, Veronica Charois, Simon Duong, and Michelle Seaborn have put themselves up for mayor. Ward 1 councillors, not yet. Ward 2 councillors, Dave Sharp. Ward 3 councillor, not yet. Ward 4 councillor, not yet. Are there any school board trustees? No. Yep. So none of them. No school board trustees. So there you go. That was the Grimsby list. Still a lot of slots to be filled. Right.
Still a lot of what?
Slots to be filled. Still a lot of candidates to announce. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and we'll come back to that during the next couple of months anyway. At this moment, it's just more about letting people know who's standing and encouraging people to stand anyway, wherever they are. And I think at some point we will try to actually get to grips with, probably closer to August when we know the full extent of the candidates, we might do a show on each of those areas, covering covering each of the candidates and what we know about them.
Yep.
Across Niagara. Okay. Trump and Xi to hold high stakes talks over Iran.
So they say it's mixed messages when you. It depends on who gives the news blurt. You can't. Fox is full of rubbish, but sometimes you'll find a pearl among Fox. Sometimes they don't exaggerate the economic news on Fox as much as they'd like to. But so basically, there is very, very mixed messages coming out of the White House.
Yeah.
When asked, Trump says, "I don't need China's help. Are you going to ask China for China help are helping resolve the issue between Iran. China is an ally of Iran, or at least a solid trading partner of Iran. Will you be asking Xi for help? I don't need anybody's help. I can do it all myself. That's what he says. However, his underlings, like Rubio, have stated publicly that they hope that China will step in and try to negotiate or help the U.S. negotiate with Iran to get this thing settled. It is bothersome, no matter how much huff and bluster they talk about winning the war and how much we've won the war and all this. They can't seem to get out of this situation where the Gulf of Hormuz is blocked. They have only a couple of different options. Right now, the blockade that the U.S. has on the Iraqi blockade, so to speak, is to minimize the ability of the Iranian government to make money and hopefully bankrupt the Iranian government, which would make, if they can't pay their soldiers or their police or anyone else, this will, of course, be real big problems for the government.
Yeah.
And of course, it will be a problem for the country because they have no wealth to buy anything, is food, medicine, whatever.
Yeah.
So that is basically the strategy, is to choke them economically.
Yeah.
But right now, what you have is who's going to last. Is the United States going to be able to last? It has taken quite a hit on the world economy. Its citizens are paying huge amounts of money for gas, as is worldwide. It is a matter of chicken right now. Who's going to blink first? Rather than have this go, now the only other option the United States has to do is to sort of quicken the pace, is start the bombing campaign all over again. So they'll have their blockade in the Straits of Hormuz, which will strangle them economically, and then start bombing different places in Iran. I don't know how many other places they can bomb. I don't think Trump will really knock out power stations and bridges. That would affect the people too much, and he'll take a lot of grief for that. Well, but he might quicken the pace of a deal. Right now, I think in the back rooms over there, maybe not Trump directly, but his minions and Xi's minions are probably talking about a way in which everybody can walk away with this without it keeping their still keeping their face, basically, without losing face.
Yeah. But on the other side of this right now is Iran's threatening to teach the US a lesson if they attack.
Well, yeah, the problem is if the United States and Israel begin their attacks again, then Iran is going to fight back. And what we found out in the very beginning, early on in the war, as you know, it's like usually on Fox, you'd hear it, they've knocked out 92% of their capability, 92% of their launchers, 92%. Well, then how come they keep firing? The amount of missiles they fired in the beginning and what they're firing now shows you they've lost a lot of their capability. No, apparently the plan was to flood the zone with a lot of missiles early on to make the Israelis and the UAE and everyone else use up their tactical defensive weapons and then fire in more effective weapons thereafter.
Yeah.
The lies, the exaggerations of how much the war costs is another thing. The Pentagon was put on how much does it cost? They say, well, $25 billion. And then of course they raised that to 29 billion because they knew that wasn't believable. And then asked, does that include all the stuff that's being destroyed, like the plant, the areas, the U.S. area of destruction, equipment that's production, camps that are being destroyed? No, it hasn't. Why do you want $200 billion more for this war if you say it's only costing us $29 billion so far? So there's a lot of questions involved there. Yeah. So basically what Xi will be able to do is bring up all this stuff in the most diplomatic of ways and try to help the United States get out of this mess. And it is in the interest of China to have that Gulf of Hormuz open. Apparently, a Chinese ship just did go through the Gulf of Hormuz the United States didn't bother stopping it. So, yeah, I believe that the United States and China see real advantage of getting that Straits of Hormuz open and oil back into the market, fertilizer and all that. It's going to be of huge interest to the United States because right now they're finding it difficult getting fertilizer. The cost of fuel to do farming has gone way up because of this war. That's going to be another problem for them and for the consumer. So the faster this is done, the better.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, absolutely. All right. I think we can kind of pass over from that.
Well, the problem too is, will Bibi let it happen? When Bibi was interviewed, he said, "No, the war's not over. It's not over. We got lots more to do. We got to keep the war going." And he sucked in Donnie. And
well, that's part of the problem, because the thing is that he's not caring about the financial impact upon the rest of the world, and neither is Trump, come to that. But it's not an easy solution, and I don't think the price of gas is going to go back down to 120 at all. Not even going to go anywhere close to it.
Well, the big economic, like Goldman Sachs and all those economic forecasters have said the oil is too late now for the oil to be reduced by the time of the midterms, which is not good news for the Republicans.
Yep.
But even if the war stops today, it will take a long time for the price of oil to come back down.
Yeah, but it won't ever come back down to what it was.
That's basically, yeah, you can pretty much figure that out. And that's a combination of factors. One, because of the fear that this could all start again. That was one of it. But of course, the oil companies are going to find ways of stiffing you.
Yeah.
And they'll use the war as a reason to do that. But one thing Trump did say is that once this is opened up, the world will be flooded with oil because there's ample amounts of oil. And that part of it is true. There will be eventually the oil price of oil come down because of the availability of it. But still, the very idea that this could flare up again may keep the oil prices high.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Okay. Moving on, and I know we're kind of staying with that theme. Right, we're staying with that kind of theme. Trump's tariffs across across the American automakers, $35 billion so far. That's not a drop in the ocean.
No. What's not happening here is what the proclaimed attempt was to reshore or jobs in the United States building cars. So the big complaint was too much of the U.S. auto industry is built in Canada and Mexico. But Canada and Mexico, not only do they build cars, U.S. cars, but they also buy them. And they buy cars that are mostly made in the U.S. And the U.S. sometimes buys cars mostly made in Canada, but it's a back and forth thing. So when the tariffs came along, it was supposed to impinge the ability of Canadian cars to be built in the United States and other foreign car makers as well, Toyota and all that. But what it's done is it's actually increased the price that a car is being built for. So the automakers themselves, including the big three in Detroit, have had to pay much more money to produce automobiles, $35 billion so far. This, of course, then would be transitioned right back to the consumer. So what was intended to bring the price of cars down and more jobs coming into the United States has pretty much not happened. There isn't a whole lot of increase in American jobs in the auto industry. And because the tariffs are still alive, or the materials that are coming into the United States are not being produced in the United States, but are tariffed. Aluminum, steel, and copper. Those are major ones that a lot of so they're tariffed at 50%. Those metals. So what happens is the U.S. car maker has to buy the aluminum it needs, mostly offshore. Then it has to put the tariff, add cost of that to the car, and pay the tariff on it. They have to pay the tariff on it, and then move the cost of that tariff to the consumer. So if you have a aluminum casing for a motor, let's say, whatever, and that costs $1 for that aluminum, and then you have to add. Now it costs you $1.50. So now this aluminum that you bought for $1 is now costing $1.50 because you have to pay the tariff on it, and then that goes into the car, and that added expense goes to the buyer.
Yeah, and what has happened here is Toyota's been the hardest hit of all these car makers. They've got 9.1 billion at current exchange rates. They've been hit by that much, and General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis have all been hit by about 6.5 billion related cost 25. And other automakers been around about 1 billion: BMW, Honda, Hyundai, Kia, Mazda, Mercedes, and Nissan, Subaru, and Volkswagen.
Currently, there's a 15% tax on vehicles imported from Europe. Vehicles produced in Canada or Mexico that fall in the North are still hit with a 25% tariff. Doesn't seem really fair, does it? We have a trade agreement. The EU brings their Japan and EU and South Korea bring theirs in with a 15% tariff. And we're their neighbors, and we get a 25% tariff on the vehicles. Yeah. And of course, the steel, the U.S. Steel and aluminum tariff is adding cost to the American consumer as well.
Yeah. And
this is a kind of good.
The car is already the single most expensive thing that people buy after their home.
Yes, so it's very, very important, and that's one of the reasons why they're so afraid of the Chinese cars. We find that in the United States, a lot of people have gone into Mexico and bought a cheap Chinese car and very happy with it, because cheap EV electric vehicle from Mexico that comes from China, because they can sell them in Mexico. There's no problem there. They don't have excessive tariffs on it. So you can go to Mexico, buy yourself an electric car and drive it back, and people are quite happy with it. Of course, that's a threat to the U.S. and it should be to Canada too, in a way, because we want those electric cars really built here, even if it's a Chinese company. If they're built here, then we get the jobs out of it, just like we build a Ford. Right? That's an American car.
One of the net effects that I see about this, but it hasn't seemingly been reported upon, is with the use of electric vehicles. One of the questions that obviously Trump is pro oil, pro gas. One of the questions that I'd have expected with all this fuel crisis is the growth in the purchase of electric vehicles.
Yes.
If I were looking for a new car right now, I'd be going and it would be electric.
Yeah. Well, and I'll get back to the article here. There's another factor here that we didn't discuss was the uncertainty, the on again, off again tariffs. Even when a company thinks, okay, well, maybe it is a good idea to bring my production to the United States. In this particular case, I think they talked about Audi. Audi are considering building more U.S. factories, and others have said they will bring production of certain models stateside, such as the next Buick compact SUV. But the ever-present uncertainty has made it challenging to commit. Well, the automakers would probably hope to see tariffs removed. That's basically it, too. There, more than one automaker has gone to the administration and saying, look, do not remove the tariffs on car parts. Remove the tariffs on car parts. A company like Ford can say, look, 80% of our cars are homemade, 80%. So you start adding the tariffs on everything else we need, and that pushes the price up. Well, the Trump government says, well, then you just start making those things here. Well, that's not easily done. And it takes time. Not only does it take time in the meantime, you still have to buy those parts.
Yeah. Can I come back on something I said?
I can't play media without more information or context.
Oh, so come back on something I said. Betty says it's changed now because people can't afford a home. The context in which I was saying is, even if you're renting, the single most important, other than your rent, the next most expensive thing that you have is your car, even if that car is a beat up second-hand car, right? So, whether you're renting or buying your own home, the second most expensive thing that you've got in that, for you possession that you've got is the car.
Yes, I think also the very idea of the tariffs have not really been well thought out. They did the emergency tariff thing, that didn't work. They still have the 25%. Like, it does not make sense when you do not have the ability to make aluminum.
Yeah.
And then you put a tariff on aluminum.
Yeah.
That just doesn't make sense. Particularly, you say, okay, we want to make more aluminum here. We're going to buy our aluminum. And that's why we're going to put a tariff on Canadian aluminum or Icelandic aluminum, or a lot of aluminum is made in the Gulf states too. So, okay, we're going to do that. But you only have the capacity to make 1/6 of the aluminum that you need. So the other 5/6 of the aluminum you need comes from other places. So why put a tariff on that? Why put the tariff on that at all? That if you're trying to incentivize an aluminum company to make an aluminum smelter in the United States, that takes 5 years, at least minimum, fast track to make an aluminum smelter. Number two, it is the amount of power you need. And we find that AI is robbing everybody of as much power as they could possibly take. Certain areas in California have been told, too bad, we got to divert our the power that you're normally getting over to AI data centers. So it just doesn't make sense. It's the old banana thing too. You don't grow bananas. So if you put a tariff on bananas, you're not making any kind of trying to get people to grow bananas. What you're doing is you're hurting the consumer, the guy that wants to buy bananas. Now, the idea, of course, is to put more money into the coffers of the United States government. But you're doing that at the cost. You're actually doing a taxing, and what you're doing mostly is taxing the average American.
And what we have to do, well, okay, we've kind of run out of time anyway, Dave.
Okay, well, I just put out there again the Gaza thing. Don't forget Gaza. As a matter of fact, don't forget the Ukraine war as well. Right now, the war, Israel is doing war in Lebanon. Hopefully, it looks as if our Orthodox Jews in Israel may be able to force an election sooner than later, because they do not want to go into Israeli armed forces, which Netanyahu's trying to make them do. So there may be these wars may stop just because the Israelis are running out of manpower. What they're not doing is running out of money. They get all the money they want from the United States, every bullet, every bomb, everything they can get from the United States in boundless amounts. But they're running out of manpower, and they're trying to force their Orthodox Jewish countrymen into the army, and they don't want to go. That's against their religious principles.
Yeah.
So anyway, there might be hope for the end, and I really wish the United States would, Trump and his lads would just kind of really focus in on Netanyahu and get him to stop being such a jerk, particularly in Gaza. And jerk is seriously, they are really seriously abusing the people of the West Bank and Gaza. Like, I'm telling you, they're not acting like a Western democracy, which they pretend to be.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's up to us to straighten them out. Stop that. Start being human. Anyway, without further ado, I bid you adieu.
All right. Bye, everybody.